Hello, welcome to Foware Studios. This is the advanced tutorial, and really this is what Cribbage Craze is all about, so hope you enjoy this one. I'll walk you through a couple things that I think make Cribbage Craze unique, and for the advanced player, well, for me personally, as I've played using this style, I kind of get hooked on it, and I wish that I had it when I go and I play other games, because it's just a ton of information, and it's really kind of interesting to have it. So I'll start out by looking at the history. A lot of the features stem from the fact that every single game is tracked, and everything, every play, it's all in here. And then I take it, and it's all summarized in the section at the top of the screen here. And this can be pretty valuable. So as you look at it, right now I've got it filtered by all players, cribbage rules. And you can see that, well, I'm doing okay. I'm winning about 52.6% of the time. You can see here, here's something that no one else tracks. How many times I've started out as the dealer, because the dealer has an advantage, versus how many times the other player has. And you can see I'm actually winning even though I've been disadvantaged by my deal. So that's kind of cool. I've also gotten more skunks. And here, it kind of starts to get interesting, and I'll show you how and where even more so. So you can see that between the two of us, myself versus anyone else, generally speaking, I've scored about 30 more points in my hand. Maybe that means I'm making good decisions about discarding. Maybe I'm just getting lucky with cards. In my crib, about the same. So again, taking those two in conjunction, maybe I can draw some conclusions about that. But overall, look at the pegging. So in terms of pegging, I'm pegging about 30 points less over the course of about 20 games than my opponents. So that's an area that I certainly have in my control, and I probably need to focus in on if I'm looking at my game seriously. And then cut help just kind of gives me a judgment call on how my discards been working, but also just generally speaking, how lucky am I getting? Is this one card really making a big difference? And well, again, we're about off by 14, 13, sorry, so we're off by a little bit. One interesting factor here, though, that I won't get too deep into, but for advanced cribbage players, there is a concept of positional play, which is to say that if you take crib averages, you should be at certain points of the board for certain hands. And it's a really cool idea. And so what I've done here is you can actually take and you can come up with your own averages based on your own gameplay style if you want to fine-tune positional play for yourself. So if I'm the pwn, I can see that on average I do about 7 plus 3, about 10.5 points as pwn, and then as the dealer I do about 15 or so points, maybe just a bit north of that. And I could use that as my basically benchmark for where I should be at any given point in the game. So one other point I'll just quickly highlight here is, as you go through, you can always click into any game if you're interested. By the way, all these are clickable if you want to go check out one game that was a highlight. And so I can click in, and then same thing here. If I want to take a look back at this one, this was a nail biter at the end. I can go back and I can see how this game was broken down individually, and I can see how I did. We each got about the same cut help. So really where the difference come, look at that. This one, I really outpegged him, made a difference, probably was the deciding factor in winning the game. But at any rate, so feel free to take a look at that, and that is a strong feature of the game. Okay, so drilling into a game in particular, I'll take one that I left in progress. Here's one that I'm losing against the normal AI. It's game 4. And as I click into that, you can see it's in mid-game. And a couple of things that I didn't highlight in the basics. So when you do series play, the number of games that you've won are highlighted here with just stars. So basically, this is game 4, so you can see I lost 2 of the games. This is the opponent's badges. And I've won 1 of the games. So this is kind of a do or die game for me. If I lose this one, series best of 5, I'm out. So as I look at this, I can kind of track back through the game. And again, this comes back to some of that positional play concept. Within the game itself, it's sometimes interesting to see how did it happen and where do we break down position by position at the end of each hand. As you can see, it looks like I started out dealer, And we should have some of this back and forth, and then I made a massive catch-up here, right after his massive hand. And then we've gone back and forth, and at this point, we're sitting with me a little bit behind, but I'm dealing, which is interesting. So we're not too far off from each other. And as we play along, maybe actually I want to, so let's see, maybe I'll get away from him right now, play some cards here. Well, it gets kind of interesting if I say, well, how's my breakdown of this score even further? How am I doing overall? How am I pegging versus this guy? So I can always click the board, and on the back of the board is all kinds of very interesting, very useful details. You can see here that our cribs are both pretty low for deal 7. That's pretty exceptional. But in terms of this cut card helping each of us, we're exactly on. It's helped both of us in exactly the same way. He's done a little better in his hand, and I've done 1 point better in pegging. So we're neck and neck, and sure enough, the score pretty much reflects that. We're off by a couple of points from each other. So let's see if I can push this up, get a go, good. Now you can see here, perhaps I should show that. So far I pegged 21. I'm going to get 1 more point, right, for another go, and sure enough, it pops to 22. So this is a really, really useful, interesting way to track through it. The other thing that's interesting is as the score comes up, it will tell you here at the bottom how your cut help is doing on an individual hand. This is the summary of how cut help is doing, but individually it's also nice to know. So because this 4 was cut, if I hadn't have had the 4, and you can see here, I would have gotten a jack and a 5, and I would have gotten an ace, a 9, and a 5, 15-2, 15-4. And because I got a 4 cut, it helped me, giving me 2 extra points, the ace, the 4, and the jack for another 15. So therefore you can see that my base hand was 4 points if no cut card had helped me, and that because of the cut card I got an extra 2 points. Really powerful, really interesting statistic because it can over time be an indicator of whether or not I'm doing a good job discarding. If I'm always trying to fill a straight or I'm always trying to do something advanced and I'm never hitting it, then it's a good indicator that maybe I need to focus on my discarding. So same thing here, it shows up, but basically the cut card did not help at all. Sorry, I had them backwards. I was talking about the opponent last hand. So you can see here that the 4 does not contribute at all to the score, and I just have my 15-2, 15-4, and the pair making 6. And finally, you can see that unfortunately it doesn't contribute to my crib either, and so I have a 15-2 and a pair for 4 and no more cut help, and sure enough it reflects that. So actually, as amazing as it is, amazing because I'm dealer, the pawn got the 2 points of cut help and actually now has more cut help in the game than I do. So these are kind of the features that are out there. I'll show one other really quick nice feature, which is that I didn't go into this before, but when you're playing cribbage against an opponent, one of the tricks you can do is if your opponent always sorts cards, then you'll know based on how they play, if they play from the left, if they play from the right, you'll know whether they have a card that's higher or lower than the card they played, or the same. So generally speaking, you're encouraged not to sort the cards in your hand when you're playing against human opponents. So you can turn that feature off so that you don't have that. A lot of people who are just playing for fun don't want that and leave it on. The other thing that we've got here is the ability to manually count cards. And so I'll turn that on for a hand just so that you can see how that works. And I hope people find it's intuitive and easy to use. And I'll discard a couple, cut a card. And again, I did not get any cut help, so we'll see how that helps him out. Maybe I'll get a little crazy. Now, as you can see here, the other thing that you can do is you can either click and confirm, or I can just straight out drag. So if I drag it, it'll take it and go from there. All right, let's see if I can do a little better here. It's not looking good for me. Yep. And that ends up putting him ahead of me in pegging. So coming to the scoring section, now what I can do is I can count them myself. There are no 15s. I do have a pair, and I have 2 runs. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6. I did not get any knobs, which would be the other thing I'm looking for. No flushes, and that's how I submit points. So it's pretty intuitive. So you count your cards however you like, with an up or down. Now let's just say I count it wrong. I do not have muggins in this game, and the reason for that is that it just never seemed fun to be stealing points from each other just because you miss some. So if you miss some, it will warn you. It'll give you another shot. If you really can't figure out what your points are, it will, after a while, actually just reveal what your points are. So I got 8 points. Brainy got 10 points. You're going to be able to see his hand jump up from 54 to 64. And in his crib, he got 2, so he'll jump from 11 to 13. Now we're getting a little tight on score. But as you can see, there's a lot of good features in the game to keep you dialed into what really is the breakdown. How close am I? How well am I doing with my discards? Why am I losing this game? And it gives you a little bit more information around just your games in general, and that's relevant because Cribbage, as you look online and as you look at some of the advanced players and some of their suggestions, you realize that good players are winning just a little over 50% of the time. And really, Cribbage is a game of multiple games, so to speak. Any one individual game, you can just get good cards and you're pretty much unbeatable no matter how well you play. So again, having that kind of built up over time history is really helpful. So one final thing here, and this is something that I use, and it's for bragging rights, it's for whatever you choose to use it for. But right now this is all players in Cribbage. You can actually go in and you can filter it by any individual player. So if I turn off all opponents, or if there's many ways to filter, but let's just say I turn off all opponents and I go down here to someone who I've played quite a bit, Tim Test 2, and I say okay, it will filter it down just to those games played against this opponent. And here you can see, well, we are dead even, 50-50. We've each won 6 games. I maybe have a little bragging rights because I wasn't dealer quite as much, and I've certainly got bragging rights thanks to the fact that I've skunked twice. But here, remember before we were talking about how I wasn't doing as well pegging? Well, here, sure enough, it's showing, right? So I'm losing the pegging battle against Tim Test 2. And I can drill down into individual games and try and find out why and so on and so forth. But just wanted to highlight that it gets pretty interesting as you build up a lifetime against any individual players, especially those who you maybe want to play over time. Maybe you want to play 100 games against someone or 200 games against someone. And it's interesting to have the win-loss, absolutely interesting. But here you'll be able to see, well, you know what, over 100 games you've pegged better than I have, or over 100 games you've gotten so much more cut help than I have. Here I've actually gotten more cut help than he did, and I still am just barely coming out tied 50-50. So it just depends on how you look at it. Other than that, the features I think I've covered largely within and covered as you go along. The only thing I will point out and highlight is that as you go in to versus random, I just wanted to point out as a final note that if you choose options that are not as common, so if you're playing, well, this is still locked, but if you're playing, say, a 5-game series, it may be harder to match. So I did want to highlight that at the end of this video, and hopefully have fun and hopefully enjoy the game. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us at the website. That's foware.com. And that's it for advanced video. Thanks.